Welcome back to the Forum Show. Today we're going to be reacting to LADbible's new jury room video called Did Boomers Have It Easier Than Gen Z? Now I've seen a bunch of clips of this on TikTok, Instagram, all over the place, basically discussing which generation had it harder. It'll be really interesting to see the results of this video, but we're going to dig into it. We're going to figure out what people are saying, what side they're on, if they're right or if they're wrong. So let's dig into it.
In America, more predominantly school shootings, then terrorism at home. I think those are kind of social impacts on young people, which are very, very difficult.
I really have to stop you there. We grew up to know that when you got on the train or the tube or the bus, look for an unattended package because people were getting blown up and shot.
I feel quite...
Obviously, I'll wait until it gets further into the video to talk about that, but every generation does that. It's not just a generational difference. Everyone does that. That's standard practice now.
Scared to sometimes go out at night. It was way easier in the boomers' time.
We didn't live in a crime-free nirvana.
I would propose to you that actually we all rebel and refuse to answer this, and then we could all have agreement. How about that?
Members of the jury, you must try to reach a unanimous decision on the following. Have boomers had it easier than Gen Z? You have 15 minutes until the first vote. Time starts now.
He's gonna start.
He's gonna start.
As probably the only boomer on the panel, work-life balance, working from home, having a stress dog in the office. None such nonsense existed when I started working, nor was there any double glazing.
All right, what he's talking about there, work-life balance, working from home, these are important things. This isn't Gen Z luxuries. Like, these are just standard things. Like, work-life balance is important now, especially in this economic state of the country. Having a work-life balance is more important than anything, because at the end of the day, your job doesn't care about you. They don't care whether you're there or not. They'll replace you the second you leave. So it's like, don't give your life away to some corporation that's not going to give you any loyalty. It's definitely not worth giving up your life for some job. Like, your work-life balance is more important than these boomers say it is. And in terms of working from home, he's just chatting shit again, really. Like, there's so many reasons why working from home is so good, especially in like the creative industry. I know so many editors, I know so many graphic designers, web developers. Like, I know so many people who work from home and do a really good job. And it's like, work from home isn't an issue for them. They come in when they need equipment or when they need to film or when they need to do, I don't know, have team meetings or something like that. Like, they come in when there's a reason to come in. But if not, then why waste the time coming in to the office just to sit there and do the same job you could do at home? Working from home is the thing that boomers crap on because they just couldn't do it when they were younger. So it's like, well, you know, we've got it better than they have. So they'll crap on it forever, basically. Reform Party does it all the time. And by all means, I'm a Reform Party supporter, but that's one policy they're completely wrong on. Working from home is a great initiative. It should carry on.
In central heating.
True.
And the list goes on.
Didn't have information at your fingertips?
Most certainly did not. You had to buy a newspaper if you could afford one to catch up on the news back in those days.
And a map in your lap when you're driving.
Indeed. North, south, east and west. Yep, we knew the directions we were travelling in. None of the luxuries, and they are luxuries, that the Gen Z or Gen Z enjoy today existed in our time.
They're not luxuries. Come on, say it. Those things that he's just listed are not luxuries. They're bare minimum standard in everything. You go and buy any car, most of them are going to have a GPS system. Unless you're buying from like the early 2000s, you're not going to have a car that doesn't have some sort of Bluetooth, sat-nav, phone holder, like any sort of GPS system. If you're buying a car that doesn't have those, then you're buying like a really old car, because that's standard bare minimum across everything is having that stuff. And they're not luxuries. They're standard. They're not luxuries. They're definitely not luxuries.
Generally speaking, you'd leave school at 16 and go straight into the work environment. If you were bright, you might stay on till you're 18. If you were exceptionally bright, you might have the luxury of going to university, but only a tiny percentage. of my generation went to uni.
I knew exactly what you were.
He's talking there about the shift in age, really, between 16 and 18, between the generations. Like, it used to be 16, like you're talking about, you go straight into the workforce, and then if you're bright, you're a doctor, whatever, you go into uni and study there. But now that's moved up to 18, you go to college, that'll get you a degree, not a degree, a route into an apprenticeship or a route into a different type of education standard. But now you have to stay on until you're 18. I think it's illegal to not stay on until you're 18. And then you can choose to go to uni or you can join the workforce. Like, there's so many options, but it's now 18 instead of 16.
What to do at university? You'd go for to be a lawyer, to be a vet, to be a doctor.
Very much vocational training. There was no such thing as sports science, yogurt weaving, or whatever else it is.
He's just chatting shit there. Like, sports science is useful if you're a gym owner, a PT, like literally any of those sort of sports-centric job categories, you need a sports science degree for. Yogurt weaving, like, this crap isn't actually a degree. Like, he's like, yes, there are some useless degrees, but this is not a good example of them.
That so many of these young people go off and waste their time and waste their money on. So fundamentally, we had it harder. We had it a lot harder.
I think I probably side with you guys did have it a bit easier, and forgive me, Peter, but I think one of the issues is social, and there's social issues and there's economic issues. And I think when you think about the social issues, I think the impact of things like social media on...
So just before it goes on about social media, there is definitely a split between social and economic issues. I think economically we're worse off. I think socially we're worse off as well because of social media, but he's going to go into that. So I'll let him carry on with his point. But I agree with him there. It's definitely a huge split.
Mental health is a really big issue for young people. I think the impact of growing up in environments that we have today, of climate change crisis, which is a huge bringer of anxiety for many young people.
I think that's as big of an issue as he's making it out to be. I feel like James is going to chip in there as well about climate change, but I don't think it's that deep of an issue. Obviously, pollution needs sorting out. There's a bunch of different environmental issues that are important, but they're definitely not worth everyday anxiety to that extent unless you work in that field. So it's like, I agree with what you're saying, but not the same sort of topics.
I think anxiety around things like, in America, more predominantly, school shootings and then terrorism at home. I think those are kind of social impacts on young people, which are very, very difficult.
I really have to stop you there, sorry, and I do believe in turn-taking in speech, but when it comes to terrorism in particular, okay, the IRA were running rampant during my youth, my childhood, and as a young adult. And we grew up to know that when you got on the train or the tube or the bus, look for an unattended package, okay? And it was seared into our psyche because that's what you had to look for, because people were getting blown up and shot on a far more regular basis.
Every generation has had those tough times.
See, I agree with James here. I think he's going to be a sort of middle ground-ish, but he's right here. Every generation has that issue. Like, we have it now with the Islamic State. Well, it's got a few different names. They've got Islamic State, extremism, whatever they want to call it. Like, it has a bunch of different names, but Islamic terror has been around for the past 20 odd years, 20, 30 years. So it's not really translatable because everyone goes through those things. Everyone looks for an unattended bag or an unattended package. And now more than ever with the recent terror attacks, especially against Jewish people, everyone's looking over their shoulder, and rightfully so. So I don't think that's a really good excuse between the two generations.
I agree and I disagree. So I think obviously technology now has made Gen Z generation very easy. And I think a lot of work opportunities are now
Don't know if
more
easy is the right
available
word.
in Gen Z's time. I mean, you
Definitely
can create
increased
a business
availability.
from your phone, in your bedroom. Boomers' time, you wouldn't even be able to start an online business. It was really difficult. They don't have computers.
See, she's saying that, she's right in some certain aspects, but also not, because there's so many people doing the exact same thing. So your competition's gone up, but so is your availability. So it's like, you're not really making a good argument there. It'd be the same if you were in the boomer generation trying to start a business. There's still the same number of businesses. You've still got loads of competition. It's just on a much larger scale now, especially for online businesses. Because I guarantee she's talking about drop shipping or selling stuff on TikTok Shop. Like, there's a few business models that work en masse, but you're never going to make business money, really, unless you fully start your own business and take on like a building and staff and all that kind of stuff. So it's true, but it's also not. Like, there's definitely differences.
So I think, yes, boomers had it a bit more harder, just where technology is going. But Chris, I completely agree with you. The mental health crisis right now is incredibly difficult. Anxiety has increased after the pandemic. It's been
That's true.
really difficult, even as
I think the pandemic had more of a social effect than a mental health effect, but I think the two are related. So I agree with it, yeah.
a pharmacist. Most of my patients are below 25. They're all on antidepressants. It's just one large, long, toxic cycle.
I think there's a bit of a
I think antidepressants are overprescribed anyway, but they also don't help with the issue. I've never heard someone take antidepressants and then not be depressed. You always hear about people just being on antidepressants forever. So it's like they're overprescribed, but they're not very effective. So it's like, where do you weigh up the balance there? And is it all related to COVID? I don't think it is.
lack of nuance in this question, and to be honest, I don't think this intergenerational conflict necessarily gets us anywhere, because we're talking about that instead of class, and I think we need to be talking about class actually. And I mean,
I agree with him. The framing of the question is wrong, but not trying to make it about class. I don't think class is the issue here. I think the issue is the framing of the question. I think the question should be framed: did boomers have it economically harder or economically easier than Gen Z, or socially? Then you'd have more clear of a question and more clear dialogue than just saying we had this issue, but we have this issue. Like, it's more of a he said, she said thing than an actual argument.
as we've covered, some aspects are better, some aspects are worse now. I mean, obviously, like, rationing was still in place up until about 1954. So, there's an awful lot of hardship. Would I, as a gay guy, want to have been a teenager in the 60s and 70s? I don't think so. I think I'll probably have an easier time now. But what we did see post-war was, the post-war consensus brought us a lot more investment in social housing. It brought us, free tuition, brought investment in the NHS, which enabled a lot of social mobility, which did benefit, my parents' generation, obviously young people today, we have very unstable housing scenarios, and very expensive education, and as Chris alluded to, people are dealing with climate breakdown, which unlike the Cold War, actually doesn't require any buttons being pushed in order for significant harm to be befall us as a society. I don't know why they're pushing the climate issue so much. I don't think it's very relevant.
I don't think it's inducing anxiety in everyone every single day. It's definitely an issue, but it's not that big of an issue. Like I said earlier, I think they're deeping it too much. I
stand with this, basically. I think some aspects are better, some aspects are worse.
I'm not going to participate in the generational culture war either, but for probably a different reason to you. I think that this sort of thing obfuscates from the real issue, which is that, sure, Peter, all of the things that he characterises about the ways that boomers had it more difficult. You don't have modern medicine, you don't have the modern conveniences that we enjoy today, but I don't think we should equate convenience with necessarily easier generally. I think, boomers, education for them was less competitive and cheaper, like you've described. Post-war Britain's economically solid. You've got some social discrimination going on. Now I think we're doing socially regressive things as well, and it's economically difficult for people. What that doesn't mean is I'm going to sit here and say, well, my generation actually has it really difficult and you guys don't know what struggle means, because that's not true either. I think now, as we've pointed out, political crisis exists in every single generation. All generations have had some kind of political crisis. What we haven't seen is political crisis occurring in the US, a new flavour of fascism that takes on the character of white nationalistic views, and like all these kind of aesthetics that are associated with them.
Now, I'm going to have to disagree here. I don't think there's fascism in the US. I think there's elements of authoritarianism, but maybe a bit more of just like an iron fist sort of way of being president. Fascism's a bit of a stretch. So I don't think you can categorize Trump's administration as fascists. I think they're just being tougher on stuff, which isn't a bad thing in some certain cases. And also the white nationalism thing, I don't get. It's not that big of a threat. Like, you're not seeing white nationalists doing terror attacks every 2 weeks, whatever it is. It's Islamist extremism are doing terrorist attacks every day, or every couple of weeks, or whatever it is now.
Old, because both young and old are going to have to deal with the ramifications of political emergency in the coming years.
Now that's true to a certain extent. There are rights being taken away. I think more so in the UK than in the US. I think in the US you've got more freedom of speech, more civil rights. Obviously there are some issues around security and privacy, but not as bad as the UK, where you can get arrested for saying stuff online. You can get arrested for praying in your head near an abortion centre. Like, there are so many issues that you can be arrested for civil rights wise in the UK that you can have it worse in the UK civil rights wise than you do in the US. But I think she's twisting it the other way around, but we'll see.
We had a very real political emergency whilst I was growing up and in my early adult life, and that was the Cold War. And we lived with the constant fear and threat of somebody in Moscow pressing a red button. So much so that I was taught how to build a nuclear bomb shelter in our house, which entailed taking the doors off, propping them up against the wall and filling suitcases with soil out of your garden if you had one. That was the ludicrousness of it all. That was a very, very real ongoing threat. And yet, did we all go into some self-indulged meltdown over it? No.
Now,
I'm going to have to pause it there. He's talking about the Cold War as if it completely stopped and there are no more nuclear weapons. That threat hasn't gone away. There are still loads of nuclear weapons. There's now more countries with nuclear weapons than there ever has been. Nuclear war is more of a threat than it ever has been. It's just not head-to-head with the US and the USSR. The Cuban Missile Crisis was huge. The Cold War was huge, but that stopped. But the threat of nuclear weapons hasn't. The threat of nuclear weapons is still there. So your point there isn't really valid.
Votes have been counted and the results are in.
I reckon most of them vote red. I don't think anyone really agrees, apart from like maybe Chris, James and Tilly, but I don't know. That is not really the result I expected. I thought the pharmacist was going to go red. I thought Tilly was going to go green. James, I think he's just doing a protest now, but we'll see.
James is making a protest.
Got to be on brand.
I think younger people would think that someone of Peter's generation don't quite understand the culture that they're growing up in, and they don't understand the arguments or the infiltration of things like social media into their lives constantly, and the pressure that brings. I think Peter's generation don't understand that.
You have a final 10 minutes to try and reach a unanimous decision.
Can I throw in I think this is a good debate to have, and I think there's lots of nuance within it, but I've had to vote. But there's an economic argument. Peter, you said that when you were younger, you would go to university and then you'd go into a job. I think what we're seeing with the younger generation is a huge, vast amount of young people going to university. Also, they now have to pay for fees. I don't think they paid for fees back in the agreement.
True, and the interest rate on student loans is so high. You're never paying off that loan, I guarantee. If you've got a student loan from uni, it's a tax at this point. It's a tax on education. Unless they clear out completely student loans and the way they work and the interest rates, you're never paying that loan back.
Only the
unless you're
brightest
like
of the brights went to university in my day, and they went there to do a vocational degree.
Yeah, and I think that's some
Cameron's still mad wonky.
Good work there, but I think that what you had the hope that if you did go, you get a job, and if you did not go to university, you still be able to maybe go into, and I'm not a historian, but like maybe a labouring job or a plumbing or working on the...
Being a warehouseman at Woolworths.
Being a warehouseman at Woolworths. I think a lot of younger people are complaining and worrying about that. They're spending all this money on their education, so they're paying to go, and then they're going and they're coming out and they're not getting into the jobs that they would want, and they're feeling a little bit disillusioned by the system of education.
True, and it doesn't help that the job market is so screwed. Like, even now, if you want to go into a trade like bricklaying or plumbing, you have to go in via an apprenticeship, and you're going to get absolutely undercut when you're being paid for that. You're going to get paid barely anything to join an apprenticeship, and it's just so the businesses don't have to pay a fair wage. So it's like you're learning, but for what? Like, you're making no money. You can't afford a car. You can't afford a motorbike. You can't afford transport. You can barely afford anything on apprentice wage. And it's true, but even now, if you graduate from uni, you've got no practical experience. No one's going to take you on. Like, that's just the truth. The job market is so screwed. Unless you're a doctor, like, unless you're like going into a really specific market where you know there's definitely jobs, it's finished. And if you started your education before the whole tech explosion, you wouldn't have known to go, okay, maybe I should focus more on coding, or I should focus more on AI. These things wouldn't occur to you to study them because the tech race had only just started off. So, yeah.
They've swallowed the lie. The whole nonsense whereby I think it was Blair set an arbitrary target of 50% of young people to go to university. Utter nonsense. But going to university is a choice. Same as when people talk about the young...
It is, but only up to a certain extent. You get to a certain level in your career where you need a degree to progress. So it's a sort of a choice, but not really if you want to make any money.
The members of the panel talk about the stresses of social media. That's a choice.
I think with social media, I think there is a degree in which it's a choice, but I think it's difficult because, I mean, just...
No, it's entirely a choice.
Well,
It's not a choice. Now, if you want any sort of news, you've got to go straight through social media. The whole Trump assassination, the war in Iran, the Charlie Kirk assassination, the Peter Mandelson scandal, all of this information broke first on social media. So if you want to stay up to date with the news, you have to be on social media. If you want to connect with people who live far away or who live in different countries, you've got to connect on social media. So I'd argue you can't live modern life without social media unless you're actively making an effort to spend more money on not being on socials or trying to act virtuous because you're not on socials. I think it's a huge difference.
There are lots of reasons why we go to uni, lots of things that we do. Some people drink every day, some people put the work in and study. That doesn't mean that we should devalue universities as sites of positive change because they split the atom. Universities have done powerful things for the good of human beings. You know, we had Cambridge University during World War II, which is my university, defended itself. East Anglia was one of the sites of the most bombing in the country, and it defended itself. The students defended it.
And Cambridge University fundamentally supplied most of the KGB spies in Britain in the post-war period. Anyway, moving on.
You can't move on that quickly. If back then, Oxbridge was basically the only way into intelligence. If you wanted to join MI5, if you wanted to join MI6, if you wanted to join military intelligence, if you wanted to join GCHQ, you had to come from Oxbridge. That was the common way. So, of course, if you're supplying all of your intelligence agencies from these two places, of course, they're going to supply the most KGB spies that have turned on the government. Like, this is a common thing. Like, if you funnel all of your people from one place, of course you're going to have some bad apples. So that point is useless. It's completely useless.
That's a fact.
I actually think young people have a pressure to go through the education system when it might not fit them now.
100%.
I think that's a bad thing. Oh, you must go to college. You must.
I think reform needs to take a big sledgehammer when they get into government, a huge sledgehammer into the education system and completely reform it, because it doesn't work for the modern era. It trains you to be a factory worker, and that's it.
You can find niche audiences much easier than the generation before. You could build a podcast around a niche space and build a micro audience and become famous to a few, which you couldn't have done before.
But so everyone now has a podcast. The market is flooded with those kind of things. So while you could do it, it's not going to be as successful.
Let me tell you now, there's 380,000 active podcasts in the world, and there's 7 billion people, so not everyone does it.
But then not everyone has internet access or access to clean water or access to food. That point's defunct because not everyone has the same access to internet.
Speaking of crimes, let's go to another point we all miss: safety on the streets. How easy was it to walk in the boomers' time? There's knife crimes crazy at the moment in London.
That's true. It's only shot.
I feel quite scared to sometimes go out at night. It was way easier in the boomers' time.
We didn't live in a crime-free nirvana. Okay.
There was two brothers in this city called the Crows that were not.
We certainly didn't, and. Yes, violence was prevalent. It was, of course, less publicised, and to that I bow somewhat in terms of the publicity about the detrimental elements of life are more accessible to the young. Look at the wrinkles. look at the baldness and tell me I didn't have it harder than Gen Z.
I don't think that's true either. I hate to like keep disagreeing with him, but it's not true. Like, if you look at just the last 10 years, have had basically the same level of policing. Obviously, it fluctuates as everything does. But the last 10 years, for example, we've had the same technology. There's only been a few advancements, but knife crime, especially in London, shot up. Well, across the board, really is shot up. And then the theft of phones is shot up. You think about the whole rape gang inquiry thing, that's shot up over the past 10 years. Like, they can say that's true. It's the publicity speed, it's all this kind of stuff, but it's probably not. Especially with the recent, like, people stealing phones on e-bikes and people getting stabbed. That's only shot up in the last few years. It never used to be this bad, but it is now. So it's like, you know, that point doesn't really stick as much anymore.
The results are in and we'll now reveal the votes.
I'm only voting this way under duress, only on the basis of the climate crisis.
And
I think
The climate crisis isn't that deep, man. He's making it out like it's some national tragedy. It's not. It's an important issue, but it's not that deep. Also, Tilly voting red. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's not true, but I don't think that's the correct way to vote. Because you made a lot of good points, but a lot of the good points were for Gen Z, and she's voted against Gen Z. So it's like, I think she should have voted green, but it'd be interesting to hear why she's not voted green.
yeah,
James and Tilly and I are actually all in agreement, despite our different colours.
yeah. We vote based on the fact that we don't want to participate in a generational culture war.
Let's think about class, not intergenerational conflict.
It's not a class
Members of the
issue, I'll be
jury,
honest.
you were asked, have boomers had it easier than Gen Z? You weren't able to reach a unanimous decision, but the majority voted no.
I think every generation just loves slagging off the generation before, saying they had it easier than me.
I was surprised a little bit. I thought maybe some of the younger guys would fall more in favour of the younger generation.
I'm always happy to be on the winning side of a debate, especially when it was so relevant, because I was the only boomer on the panel. Maybe my words were listened to.
I worry about the Andrew Tate.
That's a great clip to end on. But I don't think... Yeah, I think Gen Z won that debate, even though people didn't vote the way I thought they would. I thought James was going to sway to green as well, but you know what? That was a really interesting debate. I'd be interested to know what you think. Do you think boomers had it harder than Gen Z? Thank you for watching the forum show. If you think boomers had it easier than Gen Z, leave it in the comments below. And if you liked, please like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.